Good afternoon. Thank you, Philanthropy Asia Summit, for inviting me here. I'm delighted to share some ideas with you because Asia and the Asia-Pacific region is in a race. It's in a race to sustainability, but three different races. We've got a race to electrify our economies and our households. We've got a race to inject clean electrons, and we've got to make sure that we stay in that race for the long term. I'm Arunabha Ghosh. I'm the CEO of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We are one of Asia's leading policy research institutions, working across 20 states in India, 12 central government ministries, but also working with some other countries in the region. I'm going to start with that first race, the race to electrify. And here is where the Asia-Pacific region has some tailwinds behind it. Firstly, we've got to recognize that there's not one, but many simultaneous energy transitions that are happening in the region. The transition from traditional or no energy to access to modern energy, the transition from rural to urban patterns of energy demand, the transition towards cleaner energy systems, the transition in the form of deeper integration into global energy markets, particularly access to supply chains for clean tech products or the critical minerals that go into them, and the transition in leveraging the digital revolution to spur the decarbonization story. So what's the tailwind? The tailwind is, in the APAC region, we've already seen a massive increase just over the last decade in electrification rates. Even if we net out China, Korea, South Korea, and Japan, the jump is even bigger. In 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals were announced, only about 80% electrification. That's gone up to nearly 98%. The other story is that Asia is getting more electric. In the move towards sustainability, we've got to electrify our energy systems. So again, we see some progress there, not as much as we would like. If you net out China, Japan, and Korea, it's about little over a fifth. We've got to take it much higher. But it's still a tailwind because our electrification rates have increased. The question then is, how do we take the race to electrify into a race to clean electrons? So I'm going to tell you a few stories. One from my own country. In India alone, just over the last half a decade or so, there's been a six-fold increase in clean energy capacity. Now, over 53% of our entire grid capacity is powered by non-fossil sources. But that's not all. There is also a massive increase in electric mobility. That data that you see on the top curve is from our real-time EV dashboard. Last financial year, 2.4 million EVs sold. This financial year, which has just begun, we're just in the 6 weeks of it, already about 280,000 sold. But guess what? 92% of those are two-wheelers, three-wheelers, things that lower-income households use. In the Asia-Pacific region, we actually see even more progress. On one hand, this is the region that's showing the fastest increase in motorization. But the APAC region is also home to the largest sales of clean mobility solutions. So that's what's happening on the clean electron side. But the bigger challenge is how do we make sure that we also leverage the clean electrons for the heavy industrial decarbonization. India and many other Asian countries have large green hydrogen programs. India's target of 5 million tons per annum by 2030 is the second largest in the world. But what matters is not targets. What matters is what the market is revealing. And the latest prices we see for green ammonia, for instance, is that they are about $520, $530 a ton. Compare that to about €1,000, $1,000 a ton in Europe. So there is a price arbitrage that Asia can leverage. Similar low prices are being revealed in China as well. Even for heavy industry, the graph is a marginal abatement cost curve for net zero for aluminium in India. Now, a lot of the aluminium making process is electrification. A lot of that can come from clean electricity. So whether we're talking about household electrification, whether we're talking about clean energy infrastructure build-out, the rollout of clean mobility solutions, or even the really difficult stuff or the hard-to-abate sectors, we're seeing an opportunity, we're seeing revealed prices through auctions that are encouraging. So why have these needles moved? And it's important to understand, because the panel that was just discussing earlier, how do we take it from pilot to scale? You can't do that only with good intentions or ambitious targets. You've got to make sure that your policies are in place. India's policies, from a national action plan on climate change, the national solar mission, the national mission on energy efficiency, kept ramping up the targets from 20 gigawatts in 2010 to 175 gigawatts target in 2015, now a target of 500 gigawatts by 2030. But you've got to match that policy with market design. And this is where it's absolutely critical that we leverage the power of transparent auctions to bring down the prices, as we've done with renewable energy. Or we leverage the market to drive new R&D and innovation in the hard-to-abate sectors. Or we leverage carbon markets to apply a carbon price, as was initially done for energy efficiency, and now an Indian carbon market is being designed for emissions. And you've got to also bring in institutional design, because with markets, there are also market failures. So for instance, if you take the Solar Energy Corporation of India, it tried to solve for the market failure of poorly financed electric distribution companies on one hand, and excited renewable energy generators on the other. It de-risked it by signing two different types of contracts. We then see new institutions coming up in green financing, in carbon markets, in demand-side efficiency. Unless we put these building blocks and these foundations in place, the targets will remain just that, the pilots will remain small. So the really big question for us is then, how do we stay in the race for the long term? The 2050 game, the 2060 game, the 2070 game. I want to make three propositions here. The first, we've got to invest in resilience for infrastructure. The Asia-Pacific region, but also the continent of Africa, also other tropics, we're seeing a rise in heat-related mortalities. Cooling demand is going to be one of the biggest drivers of electricity demand in this region and in other emerging economies. Those numbers are showing at what cooling demand was as a share of total electricity in about a decade ago and what it will look like by 2050. Look at India. Over 40% of its electricity demand by 2050 will be coming from cooling services. Now, how do we move from risk to resilience? Through more national coordination and more regional cooperation. What we did in India at CEW is, at a district level, started looking at heat risk. So for all of our 700 plus districts, we identified deep assessments of heat risk. We identified over 57% of Indian districts becoming hotspots for heat stress. But then we went even deeper. We've planned to develop neighborhood-scale heat action plans for 300 Indian cities by 2027. We're already at about 140-odd cities, which means the Marina Bay Sands area will look different from the Orchard Road area. That level of hyperlocal assessment then enables us to actually expand this to the region. So recently, CEW and its partner organizations have become the hub for South Asia, for India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, for the Global Health and Heat Information Network. Hyperlocal assessment to build resilience. But this question of AI and data centers came up earlier. Across the world, about 9,000 data centers operational, 3x increase by 2030. But will some places get too hot for data centers? We see that of those 9,000, about 600 data centers are already in areas that are too hot. Will some places get too dry to cool data centers. In the US alone, 2 out of 3 data centers being planned are in extremely water-stressed areas. So what do we need to do? In India, we've identified that for our 300-odd data centers right now, about 50% are already exposed to 35-degree plus heat for about 90 days. This will rise to 90% of those data centers. So again, you're going to marry that hyperlocal assessment with looking at a resilience for infrastructure. So the latest product we launched 2 weeks ago is called Kravis. We're making AI work for climate. And it's the first of its kind tool from the Global South, climate resilience analytics and intelligence and visualization intelligence system. What did we do? We looked at 40 years of data for 279 indicators across all 700 districts in India, and then projected out 50 years into the future, and then layered it with an agentic AI tool, a platform to give salient information for the policymaker, the administrator, the investor, the insurer, to make sure that your infrastructure, that your decisions in agriculture, that your decisions in irrigation are that much more salient. This is an open data protocol that we've developed. Very happy to collaborate with all of you to do more. The second thing we have to do is then inject resilience in the food, ag, water, energy nexus. We were talking about rice earlier. In my recent book, Water, Nature, and Progress, we saw that a shift towards millets, and Asia produces a lot of millets, gives you a triple dividend. You get a much better return on nutrition. You get a much better return for the environment. For instance, shifting just 3.5 million hectares of rice production in India towards millets frees up water enough for 1/5 of India's households. And you get a better return for the farmer. Similarly, a shift to natural farming, we see that in India, in the state of Andhra Pradesh and the state of Rajasthan, see significant reductions in fertilizer use by the farmers, with its, of course, co-benefits in the emissions or the energy or the water that is associated with it. Even in urban areas, we see a huge opportunity. Less than 30% of India's wastewater is getting treated. But if we retreated its water and did something more with it, for instance, this map from the city of Thane, just north of Mumbai, we see that treated used water can be used for all sorts of other things, from public utilities, landscaping, construction, etc. Now, Singapore is a world leader in water circularity. India can become a world leader for the scale of water circularity. We've identified a $26 to $35 billion market for creating the circular economy of water. You save on energy, you get new fertilizers, you get new revenue streams. And finally, this is my last message. We got to build in to really stay in the race for the long term. We got to build resilience via a green economy. A green economy is not just food and ag. It is not just water. It is not just energy. It's a nested egg. It's the energy transition across a range of different value chains. But it's also circular economy. It's also the nature and the bioeconomy. We evaluated 36 new value chains, emerging value chains across India. And guess what? They reveal a $4 trillion investment opportunity over the next 2 decades. They reveal a $1 trillion addition to GDP across many different value chains. But the best return for me, because the resilience of the sustainability game comes from the resilience in livelihoods, they reveal an opportunity for 48 million jobs. For every clean energy job that you create, you get 10 circular economy jobs for the same amount of investment. You get 25 bioeconomy and nature economy jobs for the same amount of investment. So what does philanthropy then do? You've got to enable markets, whether it is in clean electricity, whether it's in clean mobility, whether it is in offtake for more sustainably grown food. But we also have to use those hyper-local assessments for heat, for floods, for water stress to enable markets for insurance. And finally, you've got to enable a green economy. Because the pilots that we're referring to can be scaled if we go back to those foundation pillars of policy, of market design, solving for market failures with transparent, solid institutions. Philanthropy can play that bridge and take Asia's race from electricity to clean electrons to staying in the race for long into something that is durable, sustainable, inclusive, just, and exciting. Thank you very much.